the bridge of the Zephyrian enforcement cruiser Jesuits. Edge hummed with the quiet efficiency that Captain Veltar had come to expect from his well-trained crew. The sleek vessel, nearly 2 kilometers of polished hull plating and crystalline sensor arrays, drifted at the edge of Confederation space like a patient predator. Veltar's 4 eyes tracked the holographic displays that floated before his command chair, each one monitoring a different aspect of their patrol sector. In his 47 standard years of service, he had intercepted countless vessels attempting unauthorized entry into Confederation territories. Smugglers, refugees, the occasional lost research ship, today promised to be no different. Contact, bearing 2-7-Mark-15, announced Tactical Officer Zimika, her scaled fingers dancing across the bioluminescent control surface. Vessel appears to be of unknown configuration. Captain Veltar's primary eyes swiveled toward the tactical display, while his secondary pair remained focused on the navigation readouts. Unknown configurations were rare in this part of the galaxy. The Confederation had been the dominant force for over 3 millennia, and most spacefaring species had either joined willingly or been absorbed through more direct means. Those few that remained independent rarely ventured this close to Confederation space. "Distance?" he asked, his voice carrying the subtle harmonics that indicated calm authority to his crew. "Approximately 50,000 kilometers and closing." "Sir, velocity suggests they're not attempting to evade, more like they haven't noticed us yet." Veltar's mandibles clicked in mild amusement. The Judgment's Edge was equipped with the finest stealth systems in the Confederation fleet, but most sophisticated species would have detected their presence by now through gravitational sensors or quantum field disturbances. Either these newcomers were incredibly primitive, or they were far more advanced than they appeared and were allowing themselves to be detected. "Bring us to intercept course," he commanded. "Standard first contact protocols. Kethara, preliminary scans." Science Officer Cathara, her elongated cranium marked with the intricate tattoos that denoted her rank and specialization, bent over her sensor array. "Beginning scans now, Captain. Initial readings suggest ... This is curious." "Define curious," Veltar said, rising from his command chair with the fluid grace that marked his species. At nearly 3 meters tall, his presence dominated the bridge, enhanced by the ceremonial armor that bore the insignia of his long service. "The vessel appears to be constructed using primitive metallurgy iron-based alloys, primarily with what looks like titanium reinforcement. Propulsion system reads as ... fusion-based. Captain, I haven't seen fusion drives outside of a museum in 2 centuries. Refugees," then Veltar concluded, "probably fleeing some backwater conflict with whatever outdated equipment they could salvage. Continue scans and prepare a standard greeting package. Include basic mathematical concepts and star charts. They'll need guidance to the nearest immigration processing station." The unknown vessel grew larger on the main display as they approached. Veltar had to admit it was an unusual design, where most Confederation ships were curved, bulky where they would be streamlined. The hull showed obvious signs of recent damage, with what appeared to be crude repair patches welded over several sections. Definitely refugees, he decided, probably from one of the minor species that occasionally warred amongst themselves in the Galactic Rim territories. "Sir," Communications Officer Helming announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown." "Vessel? Audio only," Veltar asked. "Visual as well, sir, but the resolution is ... primitive, on screen." The main display flickered and resolved into an image that caused several members of the bridge crew to start in surprise. The being that appeared was unlike any species in the Confederation database. It stood upright on 2 legs, not unusual in itself, but its body plan was strangely symmetrical, with 2 arms, 2 forward-facing eyes, and skin that appeared to be some sort of flexible covering rather than scales or carapace. What was truly unusual was how ... soft it looked. Most spacefaring species had developed hardened external features to deal with the rigors of space travel and potentially hostile environments. This creature looked as though it had evolved in the most benign conditions imaginable. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Persistence," the being said, its translator struggling with the unfamiliar phonemes. "We are on a peaceful exploration mission and request safe passage through your territory." "We mean no harm," and seek only knowledge of the galaxy beyond our home system. Veltar exchanged glances with his first officer. Earth. He'd never heard of such a system, and the Confederation's stellar cartography was comprehensive. Either this Earth was so remote that it had escaped notice, or these beings were using a local designation that didn't translate properly. Chen, Veltar replied, allowing the translation matrix to convert his words into what he hoped was an understandable format. I am Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Confederation enforcement vessel Judgment's Edge. You are currently in restricted space. By Confederation law, all first contact situations must be processed through proper channels. Please prepare to be escorted to Processing Station Gamma 7. There was a pause, and Veltar could see the human four that was apparently what they called themselves conferring with others outside the visual pickup range. When Chen turned back to the screen, her expression seemed tense, though Veltar found it difficult to read the alien features. Captain Veltar, we appreciate your hospitality, but our mission parameters require us to return to Earth with our survey data. Perhaps we could arrange for a brief meeting to exchange basic information. We have much to learn from a civilization as advanced as yours appears to be. Veltar's mandibles clicked again, this time in genuine amusement. The creature's naivety was almost charming. Did it really think it could negotiate with a Confederation enforcement vessel? Still, proper first contact protocols demanded patience and diplomacy. The Confederation had learned long ago that new species responded better to gentle guidance than overt force, at least initially. I'm afraid that's not possible, Captain Chen. Confederation law is quite clear on this matter. However, I assure you that the processing will be thorough but fair. You and your crew will be well cared for. While we determine the best way to integrate your species into the galactic community, another pause, longer this time. When Chen reappeared, something had changed in her demeanor, subtle shift that Veltar couldn't quite identify, but that triggered an instinctive alertness he'd learned to trust over decades of command. We understand your position, Captain Veltar, but I'm afraid we must respectfully decline your offer. We have commitments to our people that supersede any local regulations. We'll be resuming our course toward Earth immediately. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the Judgment's Edge in surprised silence. In all his years of service, Veltar had never encountered a species that simply refused first contact processing. It was unthinkably to a primitive ground crawler refusing to acknowledge the existence of the sky. Cathara, he said, his voice taking on the harder harmonics of command authority, continue your scans. I want to know everything about that vessel and its occupants. Something about this situation doesn't feel right. As the science officer bent to her task with renewed intensity, Veltar stared at the human ship on his display and wondered what kind of species produced beings naive enough to refuse Confederation authority, yet confident enough to believe they could simply ignore it and fly away. Science officer Cathara had always prided herself on her methodical approach to xenobiology. In her 32 years of service aboard Confederation vessels, she had catalogued over 400 species, from the crystalline hive minds of the Altair sector to the gaseous collective intelligences that dwelt in the upper atmospheres of gas giants. Each species followed predictable patterns evolutionary pathways that any competent, but the readings from the human vessel made absolutely no sense. She ran the bioscanner array across the persistence for the third time, checking and rechecking her instruments. The quantum resonance detectors were functioning within normal parameters. The genetic analysis algorithms showed no signs of corruption. The atmospheric sampling equipment registered perfect calibration. Yet the data streaming across her displays defied every fundamental principle of evolutionary biology she had learned at the Confederation Science Academy. Cathara, Captain Veltar's voice, cut through her concentration. Report on your scans. She turned from her station, her elongated cranium furrowed with confusion. Captain, I need to run additional diagnostics on our equipment. The readings I'm getting from the human vessel appear to be severely corrupted. Corrupted how? Cathara gestured to the holographic display that materialized above her console, showing a three-dimensional representation of the human ship overlaid with biological data. According to our scans, then their appearance suggests. That's unusual, but not unprecedented, Veltar observed. The chromatic species evolved under similar conditions. Yes, sir, but that's only the beginning. Their atmospheric requirements show adaptation to an oxygen-nitrogen mixture with an oxygen concentration of nearly 21%. The bridge fell silent. Communications officer helming Eskills fluttered nervously, and even tactical officer Zemeka looked up from her displays. 21% oxygen was lethally high. Most species required carefully controlled atmospheric mixes with oxygen concentrations between 8 and 12%. Higher concentrations led to cellular damage and rapid aging. Much higher concentrations were literally explosive. "Run the scan again," Veltar ordered, his voice carrying the undertones of someone who suspected equipment failure but wanted to be certain. "I've already run it 3 times, Captain. The results are consistent." But it gets worse. Cathera manipulated the holographic display, highlighting different aspects of the biological data. Their homeworld's stellar radiation levels appear to be approximately 15% above what we consider safe for unprotected exposure. Equipment malfunction. First, Officer Gelthies stated flatly, "It has to be. No species could evolve under such conditions." Cathera's secondary arms gestured helplessly while her primary hands continued working at the console. "That's what I thought, sir, but look at this." She highlighted another section of data. Temperature variations on their homeworld appear to range from well below the freezing point of water to temperatures that would denature most proteins. And according to the geological scans embedded in their ship's memory banks, which they're broadcasting openly. Apparently, as some sort of cultural exchange gesture, their planet shows evidence of multiple mass extinction events. Mass extinctions? Veltar moved closer to the display, his 4 eyes focusing intently on the data streams. "At least 5 major ones, sir, possibly more. Events that would have wiped out all complex life on most worlds. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions that covered continents, atmospheric composition changes, ice ages that lasted for millennia." Cathera's voice carried a note of academic fascination, despite her confusion. Yet somehow, not only did life survive these events, but it became more complex. "I considered that," Cathara replied, "but their genetic structure shows clear evolutionary progression. Natural selection, genetic drift, speciation, eventsol, the markers of organic evolution. They're definitely natural," but she trailed off, staring at a new data stream that had just appeared on her display. "But what, science officer?" "Captain, I'm detecting trace elements in their ship's atmosphere that shouldn't be there. Heavy metals, chemical compounds that would be toxic to most species. But the humans aboard don't seem to be wearing any protective equipment. In fact, their cardiovascular systems appear to be actively processing these substances as if they were normal atmospheric components. Could their ship's life support be malfunctioning?" First Officer Gelthia suggested. "No, sir. Their life support systems are crude but functional. What's more disturbing is that based on the spectral analysis of their exhalations, they're not just tolerating these conditions, they're thriving in them. Their metabolic rates are actually higher than I would expect for a species their size." Veltar walked slowly around the holographic display, studying the impossible data from multiple angles. In his experience, when the evidence contradicted established science, the evidence was usually wrong. But Cathera was one of the finest xenobiologists in the fleet, and her equipment was state-of-the-art. "What does the cultural analysis suggest?" he asked. Cathera manipulated her controls, bringing up a new set of data streams. This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect. To be in a constant state of conflict, not just between different groups of their own species, though that's certainly prevalent, but between their species and their environment itself. "Explain." They have detailed records of atmospheric storms that would level cities, seismic events that reshape continents, temperature extremes that kill thousands. But rather than seeking shelter from these events, they seem to have developed technologies and strategies specifically to survive them. Their ship design philosophy, for instance, it's not elegant or efficient like Confederation vessels. It's robust, redundant, built to keep functioning even when major systems fail. "The hull plating," Zemeka said suddenly. "I was wondering why they used such thick, crude materials, when modern composite armor would be lighter and stronger." "Exactly," Cathara confirmed. "Look at these maintenance records. They expect their equipment to break down regularly. And they've designed everything to be fixable with basic tools and raw materials. Captain Veltar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton as the implications began to settle in. Are you suggesting that these humans evolved, not despite their hostile environment, but because of it? Captain, I'm not sure what I'm suggesting. Anymore, by every metric we use to determine habitability, their homeworld should be classified as a death trap. The fact that intelligent life not only evolved there, but developed space travel suggests. She paused, her scientific training warring with the impossible implications of her data. Suggests what, science officer? That perhaps our understanding of what constitutes a habitable world is based on a rather limited sample size. If humans can not only survive, but flourish in conditions we consider lethal, then what we've always assumed were the fundamental requirements for intelligent life might actually be the optimal conditions for weak species. The bridge fell silent again, but this time the silence carried weight. Each member of the crew was beginning to understand that they might not be dealing with primitive refugees after all. They might be encountering something far more significant and, potentially, far more dangerous. Continue your scans, Veltar ordered quietly, and prepare a detailed analysis for Confederation Command. I have a feeling they're going to want to know about this immediately. As Cathara returned to her instruments, none of them noticed that the human vessel had begun subtle course corrections, or that additional contacts were appearing at the very edge of their sensor range. Still too distant to identify, but growing steadily closer. The main display showed Captain Sarah Chen in perfect clarity now, and every detail of her appearance had taken on new significance for the crew of the Jesuit's Edge. The casual confidence they had initially mistaken for naivety was revealed. As the steady calm of a predator, completely aware of its capabilities, the simple uniform they had dismissed as primitive was Captain. Chen Veltar replied. I assume you're aware that our conversation has taken on additional complexity since we last spoke. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. A flash of what might have been approval. Captain Veltar, your science officer, has been very thorough in her research. We've been monitoring your archive access for the past several hours. The bridge of the Judgment's Edge fell silent. Monitoring their archive access meant the humans had somehow penetrated Confederation. Quantum encryption technology that was supposed to be impossible to breach without physical access to the quantum cores themselves. That's impossible, Communications Officer Helming said, his gills fluttering with agitation. Our quantum communications are vulnerable to species that evolved under constant selection pressure for problem-solving and adaptation, Chen interrupted gently. Captain Veltar, we need to establish some ground truths before this conversation continues. Your people aren't in danger from Uznat today, not from this encounter. But the galaxy itself is facing a threat that makes all our current concerns irrelevant. Veltar exchanged glances with his senior staff. The human captain was confirming everything they had discovered in the archives, but her casual admission of their technological capabilities was deeply unsettling. You know what you are, he said. It wasn't a question. We've always known what we are, Captain. Chen paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. We are the children of Earth, forged by 4 billion years of survival against odds that would have destroyed any other world 1,000 times over. We are the offspring of ice ages and asteroid impacts, of predators that hunted in coordinated packs and disasters that required entire civilizations to adapt or die. We learned to make tools because our claws weren't sharp enough. We learned to cooperate because alone we were prey. We learned to wage war because everything on our world was trying to kill us, and we decided to kill it first. The tactical display updated, showing the approaching human fleet in perfect formation. 12 ships, each one built with the same robust, seemingly primitive design as the Persistence. But now that the crew of the Judgment's Edge understood what they were looking at, the formation was clearly the product of military minds that thought in terms of overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, and redundant capabilities. You're warriors, First Officer Galthea said, and there was something like awe in his voice. We're survivors, Chen corrected. Warriors are trained. We were born to this. Every human child grows up learning that the universe is hostile, that safety is temporary, and that the only way to protect what you love is to be stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than whatever threatens it. Your people develop spaceflight to explore and expand. We developed it because we knew that someday, staying on one world would mean extinction. And the Devourer's Cathera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chin's expression grew. Grim. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies consistent with massive fleet movements in the galactic void. Ships the size of moons, moving in formations that span light years. We've been tracking them for weeks now, and their trajectory is clear. They're heading for the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. The main display shifted, showing star charts with projected movement patterns. The scale was staggering, entire star systems going dark in sequence as something vast and hungry moved through them. But more than that, you need to understand that the old ways of thinking about warfare, diplomacy, and galactic politics are over. What's coming isn't interested in negotiation or surrender. It exists to consume, and it will continue consuming until there's nothing left. And you expect us to simply accept your authority in this matter? Captain Veltar asked, though his tone carried more curiosity than challenge. I expect you to do what every successful species does when faced with extinction. Adapt. Chen leaned forward slightly, and her next words carried the certainty of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Captain, your people have spent millennia building a civilization based on the assumption that the universe is fundamentally stable and predictable. You've developed technologies and social structures optimized for peace and prosperity. That's admirable, and under different circumstances, it would be sustainable. But, Veltar prompted, but the Devourers don't care about your peace. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't leave survivors. They exist to turn organized matter into raw energy for their own expansion. Every world they consume makes them stronger. Every fleet they destroy adds to their resources. They are the ultimate expression of what happens when survival evolution continues past the point where cooperation becomes beneficial. Tactical Officer Zemeka studied the projected fleet movements. How long do we have? Based on current velocity and consumption patterns. The leading edge of their fleet will reach the outer territories in approximately 18 months. The core worlds have maybe 3 years before they face direct assault. The timeline sent a chill through the bridge crew. 3 years to prepare for a threat that had driven the godlike predecessors to abandon the galaxy entirely. What do you propose? Veltar asked. Chen's answer came without hesitation, delivered with the confidence of someone who had been planning for this exact conversation. We propose a partnership. Humanity will share our defensive technologies and tactical expertise. We'll help you convert your industrial base to military production. We'll train your personnel in survival-based warfare. In exchange, we need access to your manufacturing capabilities, your population centers for evacuation, coordination, and your scientific resources. And if we refuse, then you'll face the Devourers alone, with populations that have never known real hardship and technologies designed for exploration rather than warfare. You'll last maybe 6 months after first contact. The brutal honesty of the assessment hit the crew like a physical blow. But worse than the words themselves was the realization that Chen wasn't threatening them. She was simply stating an observed fact with the dispassionate certainty of someone who had spent her life calculating survival odds. Captain Chief? Engineer Mordick said slowly. Assuming we accept this partnership, what would it look like in practical terms? We start by evacuating non-essential populations to the galactic Remaz, far from the Devourer approach, vector as possible. We convert your industrial worlds to military production, focusing on simple, robust weapons and defensive systems rather than sophisticated technology that can be disrupted. We train your military forces in asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and the kind of improvised combat that becomes necessary when your primary defensive lines are overrun. You're talking about transforming our entire civilization, Gelthes observed. I'm talking about giving your civilization a chance to survive, Chen replied. The alternative is watching it get consumed, along with everything else in this spiral. Armed, Captain Veltar stood silently for a long moment, weighing decisions that would affect the fate of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Finally, he activated his command console. Communications, prepare a priority transmission. To Confederation Command, full encryption, maximum urgency. Sir, Helming said, what should I tell them? Veltar looked at the human captain on his display, then at his own crew, who were all staring at him with expressions that mixed fear, hope, and desperate determination. Tell them that first contact protocols have been superseded by existential threat parameters. Tell them that we've encountered the galaxy's salvation, and it comes with a price we cannot afford to refuse. He paused, then added, and tell them that humanity isn't asking to join our civilization. They're offering to save it. On the display, Captain Chen nodded approvingly. Welcome to the real universe, Captain Veltar. It's more dangerous than you ever imagined, but for the first time in a million years, it's not hopeless. As the human fleet moved into formation around the Judgment's edge, the age of peaceful galactic expansion was over. The age of survival warfare had begun, and somewhere in the void between galaxies, ancient engines of consumption continued their inexorable approach, unaware that for the first time in their existence, they were moving toward prey that had been specifically designed to fight back. The journey from the archive chamber to the bridge felt like the longest walk of Cathera's life. Each step carried the weight of cosmic revelation, and with every meter she covered, the implications of what she had discovered grew more terrifying. In her hands, she carried a data crystal containing the most dangerous information in galactic history, proof that humanity was not just another species, but a weapon system left by gods to fight demons. The bridge of the Jesuit's edge hummed with its usual efficiency when she entered, but Cathara could see the subtle signs of tension in her crewmates. Captain Veltar stood before the main display, studying tactical readings with the focused intensity she had come to associate with impending combat situations. The human vessel Persistence hung in the center of the screen, still maintaining its position with the casual confidence that had initially seemed like naive defiance. Now she understood it for what it truly was: the patience of an apex predator. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that immediately drew the attention of every officer on the bridge. "I need to brief the senior staff immediately. What I've discovered, it changes everything." Veltar turned, his 4 eyes studying her with the practiced assessment of a commander who had learned to read the subtle signs of crisis in his officers. What he saw in Cathara's posture and bearing made his mandibles click in concern. Conference room now. All senior staff. Within minutes, the ship's leadership was assembled around the holographic conference table. First Officer Gelti, Tactical Officer Zemeka, Communications Officer Helming, and Chief Engineer Mordek all looked expectantly at Cathara as she placed the data crystal in the table's interface port. "Before I begin," Cathara said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal, "I need you all to understand that what I'm about to share is classified at levels that could result in our molecular disintegration if disclosed improperly. I accessed this information under emergency first contact protocols, but the implications go far beyond a simple meeting between species." The holographic display activated, showing the Terra system data alongside the predecessor files. Cathara began with the survey reports from nearly 1,000,000 years ago, watching as her colleagues' expressions shifted from professional interest to growing alarm as the details of the Death World surveys unfolded. "This is impossible," First Officer Gelthius said when the presentation reached the casualty reports. "No species could evolve on such a world." "That's what I thought too," Cathara replied. "But the humans are proof that it's not only possible it's been done, and not by accident." She activated the predecessor files, and the conference room fell into stunned silence as the ancient records revealed their carefully planned experiment. When she reached the entry describing humanity as guardians forged in the crucible of hell itself, Chief Engineer Mordek made a sound that was part whistle and part prayer. "By the eternal void," Tactical Officer Zemeka breathed, "they're not explorers. They're a weapon." "But a weapon against what, Communications Officer?" Helming asked. Cathara activated the final file, the recent detection of Devourer Scout elements. The room temperature seemed to drop as the implications became clear. Captain Veltar was the first to break the silence that followed. "How confident are you in the authenticity of these files?" "The archive authentication is absolute, Captain. These files come from the deepest vaults of Confederation knowledge. They're real." Cathara paused, then added the detail that had been haunting her since leaving the archives. "Captain, there's something else. The timing isn't coincidental. The humans appeared at the edge of our space just 6 months after the Devourer Scout detection. Either that's the most unlikely coincidence in galactic history, or ... or they know, Veltar finished grimly. Somehow, they know what they were created for. Sir, Zemeckis said, her voice tight with realization. Those additional contacts we detected at the edge of sensor range, they're not random vessels, are they? Kethra pulled up the tactical display. The distant contacts had resolved into a formation of ships, still too far away for detailed scanning, but clearly following precise flight patterns. Our long-range sensors show at least 12 vessels, possibly more. They're maintaining a perfect search and rescue formation designed to respond to any threat to the lead ship. They knew we were here before they sent the Persistence, Veltar, said, his voice carrying the tone of a professional soldier, recognizing a masterfully executed tactical maneuver. That ship isn't an explorer, it's bait. The tactical implications hit the crew like a physical blow. The humans hadn't stumbled into Confederation space by accident. They had deliberately sent a single vessel to make contact while keeping their main force in reserve, perfectly positioned to respond to any hostile action. It was a strategy that spoke of species-wide military thinking and coordination on a scale that defied comprehension. Captain, Chief Engineer Mordick said slowly, if they're really what these files suggest, beings engineered for survival and warfare, then their technology isn't primitive at all. It's optimized for exactly the kind of conditions they might face. Explained their ship design, sir. We've been thinking of it as crude because it uses older technology and heavy construction. But if you're facing an enemy that can disrupt advanced systems, you'd want simple, robust equipment that keeps working even when everything else fails. Their fusion engines aren't primitive, they're bulletproof. Their hull plating isn't crude, it's proof against energy weapons that might slice through our composite armor. Zemeckis pulled up the tactical analysis of the Persistence. Sir, if I redesign our threat assessment based on the assumption that their technology is purpose-built for warfare against advanced opponents. She paused, running calculations. Captain, their ship isn't just robust, it's a fortress. Those repair patches we detected, they're not repairs, they're battle damage from combat situations that would have destroyed our vessel entirely. The silence that followed was broken by Communications Officer Helming. Sir, there's something else. I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in their communications. The humans use a remarkable number of words related to warfare, survival, and resource scarcity. Their casual conversation includes tactical concepts that most species reserve for military planning. What do you mean? When Captain Chen spoke with us, she used phrases like mission parameters and commitments to our people and resuming course. That's not exploration language, sir. That's military language. They think in terms of objectives, resources, and tactical requirements even in diplomatic situations. Captain Veltar stood and walked to the main display, studying the human vessel with new understanding. Everything about humanity's first contact made sense. Now their refusal to submit to processing, their casual confidence in the face of superior firepower, their perfectly coordinated backup force. They're not here to join galactic civilization, he said finally. They're here to evaluate it. Evaluate it for what, sir? Galthes asked. To determine whether we're worth protecting, Cathara answered, or whether we're a liability that needs to be eliminated before the real war begins. The truth of that statement settled over the bridge crew like a shroud. Humanity hadn't come seeking membership in the galactic community. They had come to assess whether the existing galactic powers could serve as allies in the coming conflict with the Devourers, or whether they would need to be removed as obstacles to effective defense. Sir, Zemeckis said quietly, we need to contact Confederation Command immediately. This information needs to reach the High Council before her words were cut off by an alert from the navigation station. Captain, the human reinforcements have just entered maximum weapon range. Veltar felt his exoskeleton chill as he realized the position they were in. The Judgment's Edge was no longer an enforcement vessel investigating a first contact situation. They were a single ship, isolated and far from support, facing an unknown number of vessels crewed by beings specifically engineered for warfare, and those beings were about to discover that their carefully planned evaluation had been compromised by a science officer's curiosity. All stations prepare for, Veltar began. Captain, Helming interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human vessel. Captain Chen is requesting immediate communication. On the main screen, Captain Sarah Chen appeared, but her demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the diplomatic uncertainty of their first contact. Her expression was calm, professional, and carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command in life-or-death situations. "Captain Veltar," she said, "we need to talk, and this time we're going to discuss the real reason we're both here." The weapon system had awakened, and it was ready to negotiate. Cathera's discovery burned in her mind as she made her way back to the bridge, the classified files from the deep archives still echoing in her thoughts. But something nagged at her raw detail that didn't quite fit. The theoretical studies had been fascinating, but they were still just theories. The survey reports were nearly 1,000,000 years old. There had to be more, something deeper that explained not just what humans were, but why they had evolved on Terra in the first place. She had accessed Level 7 files, but the archive system had hinted at deeper classifications. Level 8, Level 9. Classifications so restricted that most Confederation officials didn't even know they existed. Files that contained the galaxy's oldest and most dangerous secrets. Back in the archive chamber, Cathera hesitated before activating the quantum communicator again. What she was about to attempt could end her career or worse. But the implications of humanity's existence demanded answers, even if those answers came from the deepest, most forbidden vaults of Confederation knowledge. "Computer, I need to access the predecessor archives." The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in quantum communication terms. When the archive intelligence finally responded, its voice carried a different quality, deeper and more ominous. Access to predecessor archives requires Level 9 clearance and joint authorization from 3 members of the High Council. Current user clearance insufficient. Override authorization. Emergency First Contact Protocol 7 Alpha species presents potential existential threat to Confederation stability. Another pause then. Emergency protocols recognized. Granting temporary Level 9 access. Warning: unauthorized disclosure of predecessor archive information is punishable by molecular disintegration. Confirm understanding. Cathera's throat went dry. Molecular disintegration, a punishment so severe it was applied only to those who threatened the very existence of galactic civilization. Confirmed. Display predecessor archives related to Terra. System and species designation, human. The holographic displays around her shifted, and suddenly she was looking at information that made the Death World survey reports seem mundane. The files were ancient, not just millions of years old, but billions, and they were written in the flowing script of the predecessors. The mythical race that had supposedly vanished before most current civilizations had even evolved. Translation, the computer announced. Warning: predecessor linguistic concepts may not translate accurately into modern languages. The first file that materialized carried a header that made Cathera's consciousness real. Project Genesis, Phase 7, Ultimate Adaptive Experiment. She began to read, and with each line, the universe seemed to grow darker around her. Council of Architects, Cycle 847,293. The Great Dying approaches. Our calculations show a 97.3% probability of galactic civilization collapse within the next 1,000,000 cycles. The Devourers have consumed 3 spiral arms, and their hunger grows stronger with each victory. Traditional defensive measures have failed. The time has come for more ... extreme solutions. The Genesis project has produced remarkable results across 12,000 seeded worlds, but none of the resulting species have shown the necessary characteristics for long-term survival against the Devourers. They are too specialized, too dependent on stable conditions. Too ... soft, they will die as we are dying, consumed by forces beyond their comprehension. Phase 7 will be different. We have identified a world of such hostility that even we dare not land upon its surface for extended periods. Every natural force conspires to destroy life-poisonous atmosphere, crushing gravity, unstable magnetic fields, frequent bombardment by asteroids and radiation. The native life forms are so aggressive that they consume each other in endless cycles of violence. It is perfect. We will seed this world, not with our finest creations, but with the most adaptable genetic templates we possess. We will engineer them not for comfort, but for survival. Not for peace, but for war. Not for the galaxy as it is, but for the galaxy as it will become when the Devourers arrive. If any species can survive what is coming, it will be the ones forged. In this crucible of constant death, Cathara's hands trembled as she continued reading. The predecessors beings of such advanced technology that they were considered mythical by most modern species had deliberately created humanity as a weapon against something called the Devourers. Project Genesis Phase 7, Cycle 847,291. The seeding is complete. We have introduced the base genetic material onto the target world, designated Terra in the ancient tongue. The hostile environment will do the rest. Natural selection will eliminate any weakness, any dependency on external support, any inclination toward peace over survival. We estimate that if the experiment succeeds, the resulting species will emerge in approximately 50 million cycles. They will be unlike anything the galaxy has shined beings capable of surviving, not just hostile worlds, but hostile galaxies. They will adapt, they will overcome, and most importantly, they will fight. May the universe forgive us for what we have created. The next entries were sporadic. Spread across millions of years of observation, Cycle 840,000. The Terra experiment shows promise. Mass extinction events have accelerated evolutionary development. The surviving organisms display unprecedented adaptability. Cycle 820,000. Intelligence is emerging. The Terra species show tool usage and social cooperation previously seen only in species from paradise worlds, yet they maintain the aggression and adaptability of apex predators. Cycle 800,000. Final observation before our withdrawal. The Terra species have achieved primitive civilization while maintaining their essential characteristics. They wage war upon each other with sophisticated tactics while simultaneously cooperating. To overcome environmental challenges, they are exactly what we hoped they would become. The universe will test them thoroughly before they achieve the stars, but if they survive their own adolescence, they will be ready for what is coming. This is our final gift to the Galaxy Guardians, forged in the crucible of hell itself. The final entry was dated much more recently, only 3,000 years ago. Automated monitoring station, Cycle 3, the Terra species, now calling themselves humans, have achieved atomic energy. They have used it to wage war upon themselves with characteristic efficiency, yet they survived even their own ultimate weapons. The forging continues. They will achieve spaceflight within centuries. When they do, the galaxy will finally have its guardians. Pray that they remember what they were created to fight. Cathara stared at the final entry in numb shock. Humanity wasn't just an impossibly evolved species from a death world. They were a deliberately engineered weapon created by the most advanced civilization in galactic history, specifically to fight something so terrible that even the predecessors had fled rather than face it. And now they were here, in space, exactly as the predecessors had planned. "Computer," she whispered, "search current galactic databases for any reference to Devourers. Searching, ... no results found in standard databases. Searching classified archives, ... no results found. Searching deep historical files, ... one result found. File classification, Level 10, Cosmic Threat Assessment. Level 10 Cathara didn't even know such a classification existed. Display file. The hologram that appeared was simple, just a few lines of text, but they chilled her to her core. Long-range sensor arrays in the outer rim have detected anomalous energy signatures consistent with predecessor historical records. Analysis suggests possible Devourer Scout elements probing galactic defenses. Estimated time until main force arrival, 500 to 1,000 standard years. Recommend immediate implementation of all contingency protocols. The ancient enemy returns. The file was dated 6 months ago. Cathara's mind reeled as the full scope of the situation became clear. The humans weren't just another species seeking their place in galactic civilization. They were the activation of an ancient failsafe, a weapon system deployed by beings who had foreseen this exact moment billions of years ago. The Devourers were coming, and humanity had arrived just in time to fight them. But as she sat in the archive chamber, surrounded by the weight of cosmic secrets, one terrible question echoed in her mind. If the predecessors beings of godlike technology and wisdom had been forced to flee from the Devourers, what chance did the galaxy have, even with humanity's help? And more immediately terrifying, did humanity even know what they had been created for? Were they here by accident, or were they already following programming embedded in their genetic code billions of years ago? The distant contacts on their sensors suddenly took on an entirely new significance. They weren't just reinforcements, they were the awakening of a weapon system that had been dormant for 1,000,000 years, finally ready to fulfill its purpose. The galaxy's salvation had arrived, and Cathera wasn't sure if that was a cause for hope or terror. The deep archives of the Confederation stretched through quantum-locked data matrices that spanned 3 star systems containing the accumulated knowledge of millennia. Cathara had never accessed the deepest levels before, be outside the highest echelons of command ever did. But the impossible readings from the human vessel had driven her to request emergency archival access, a privilege granted only when potentially civilization-altering discoveries demanded historical context. She sat alone in the Judgment's edges, archive access chamber, surrounded by holographic displays that flickered with data streams from across the galaxy. The quantum entanglement communicator hummed softly as it maintained connection with the Confederation's primary archives on Centauri Prime, transmitting her search queries at faster-than-light speeds and returning results that materialized as floating text and images around her workstation. Computer, search historical records for any system designation matching Earth or similar phonetic variants, she commanded, searching. The archive intelligence responded in its neutral tone. Initial search parameters returned 23,847 planetary designations with similar phonetic structures. Please specify additional search criteria. Cathera frowned. She had expected this. Earth was apparently a common designation, probably meaning something like ground or world in many primitive languages. She needed to be more specific. Refine search to include stellar coordinates approximately bearing 127.3, mark 41.7 from current position. Stellar class G-type yellow dwarf, planetary mass 1.4 Confederation standard, searching refined parameters. Search complete. One result found. Warning: requested file contains level 7 classified information. Confirm authorization to access Level 7. Cathera's breath caught. Level 7 classifications were reserved for information that could destabilize entire sectors. She had Level 5 clearance as a senior science officer, but Level 7 required special authorization. Yet her emergency access codes, granted due to the potential first contact situation, apparently extended that far. Authorization confirmed. Display results. The holographic displays around her shifted, and suddenly she was looking at a file that made her stomach clench with unease. The header read, Planetary Survey Report Designation. Terra Earth Classification. Extreme Hazard Status, Quarantined. Computer, when was this file created? Primary survey date, 847,293 standard years ago. Last update, 847,291 standard years ago, following loss of Survey Team 7, nearly 1,000,000 years ago. Cathera scrolled through the initial data, her scientific mind cataloging the information even as a growing sense of dread filled her consciousness. The planetary data matched perfectly with what she had gleaned from the human bioscan's high gravity, toxic atmospheric composition, extreme temperature variations, unstable magnetic field, but it was the survey team reports that made her blood run cold. Commander Velti's Confederation Survey Division. Field Report 1. Initial planetary scan suggests Terra is unsuitable for colonization by any known species. Atmospheric oxygen content at 21% approaches lethality threshold. Gravity, 1.4 times standard, would require extensive genetic modification for most Confederation species to survive long-term. Recommend immediate reclassification to hazard status. She continued reading, watching the reports grow increasingly desperate. Field Report 7. Lost contact with Survey Team 3 during atmospheric entry. Wreckage suggests craft failure due to unexpected atmospheric conditions. Chemical analysis indicates presence of corrosive compounds not detected in orbital scans. Recommend immediate evacuation of remaining personnel. Field Report 12. Survey Team 5 reports discovery of native life forms. Preliminary analysis suggests impossible evolutionary pathways. Local fauna exhibits extreme aggression and apparent immunity to standard pacification techniques. Team 5 has requested emergency extraction following attacks by creatures they describe as apex predators of impossible efficiency. Kethara's hands trembled as she scrolled through report after report detailing the deaths of survey teams. Exposure to toxic atmosphere, crushing gravity that broke bones, radiation poisoning from the unstable star, attacks by native life forms that seemed engineered for maximum lethality. Field Report 23, this will be my final report. Commander Zektheri and the remainder of Survey Team 7 are dead. The planet Terra is not merely hostile, it is actively malevolent. Every life form we have encountered appears designed for one purpose: killing and consuming other life forms. The atmospheric conditions would be lethal to most Confederation species within hours. The native fauna hunts in coordinated groups with tactical intelligence I have never seen outside of sentient species. We detected no signs of intelligence. Yet the creatures we encountered displayed problem-solving abilities and adaptability that suggests I cannot complete this thought. If intelligence did evolve on this world, it would be unlike anything in the galaxy. Recommend permanent quarantine. No Confederation species should ever attempt to land on this world again. The final entry was, from the evacuation commander, Terra has been designated a Class 7 death world and placed under permanent quarantine. All records of this survey are to be classified at the highest levels. The planet poses no strategic value and represents only danger to Confederation personnel. Let the dead world keep its secrets. But that wasn't the end of the file. Kethara's enhanced clearance revealed additional entries, much more recent within the last few thousand years. Long-range monitoring update, 3,247 years ago. Automated. Monitoring stations detect unusual energy signatures from Terra system. Possible development of primitive atomic energy by unknown species. Investigation denied due to quarantine status. Long-range monitoring update, 847 years ago. Primitive radio transmissions detected from Terra. Linguistic analysis suggests development of complex communication by indigenous species. Investigation denied due to quarantine status. Long-range monitoring update, 73 years ago. Primitive spacecraft detected leaving Terra system. Single vessel, chemical propulsion. Vessel failed to achieve interstellar travel and was lost in deep space. No further action required. Long-range monitoring update, 34 years ago. Multiple spacecraft detected in Terra system. Advanced fusion propulsion signatures. Species designated human appears to have achieved spaceflight capability. Recommendation for investigation denied. Due to quarantine status and potential danger to survey personnel, Kethara stared at the final entry in growing horror. Computer. Cross-reference. Human biological data with Confederation databases for any species capable of surviving death world conditions. Processing. No matches found in standard biological databases. Searching restricted archives. 1. Partial match found in theoretical xenobiology studies. Display. New file appeared. This one from the Confederation's most advanced research institutions. The header read, Theoretical Evolution Under Extreme Selective Pressure. Project Death World Adaptation. In this study, we model the theoretical evolutionary pathways that might occur on worlds with extreme selective pressure. So-called death worlds where survival requires constant adaptation to multiple lethal environmental factors. Our modeling suggests that species evolving under such conditions would develop characteristics unprecedented in the known galaxy. Extreme adaptability to environmental changes enhanced. Problem-solving abilities due to constant survival challenges. Superior physical resilience and strength relative to body mass, accelerated healing and immune system responses. Psychological resilience to stress and trauma tendency toward cooperative behavior in crisis situations combined with individual advanced tool usage and technological innovation driven by survival necessity theoretical modeling suggests such a species, if it achieved spaceflight, would possess capabilities that could revolutionize or destabilize galactic civilization. However, the probability of intelligent life evolving under such conditions approaches zero. This study remains theoretical only. The file was dated less than 50 years ago. Kethera sat back in her chair, her mind reeling from the implications. The humans weren't just another species stumbling into galactic civilization. They were the living proof of theories that scientists had dismissed as impossible. They were the successful product of evolution on a world so hostile that the Confederation had quarantined it as unsurvivable. And now they were here, in space, with ships that looked primitive but were probably more robust than anything in the Confederation fleet. Ships built by a species that had spent millions of years learning to survive the impossible. Her hands shaking, she activated the communication array to contact Captain Veltar. If humans had evolved on a quarantined death world, and if they had achieved spaceflight in less than a century from first atomic energy, what else might they be capable of? And more terrifyingly, how many more of them were coming? The distant contacts that Tactical had detected earlier suddenly took on a much more ominous significance. Those weren't random ships. They were reinforcements. Humanity had found them first.